Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Housing Committee. My name is Councillor Julian Tuke and I'm Chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel. If you ask a question at the meeting, you will be deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for broadcast and/or training purposes. Please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, please make your way to the nearest fire exit. First item on the agenda is apologies, and we have apologies from Lizzie Maudsley and Agnieszka Wisniewska. I think that's it. Second item is declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? No. Next item. Public and member questions. We haven't received any. None have been received. So we're getting through this agenda quickly. Item number 4. The minutes of the 21st of January meeting have been circulated with the agenda. I'm not aware of any amendments. So I move that members approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of January. Can we have a show of hands? Okay. Brilliant, thank you. Director briefing, so verbal update. There is no director's briefing for this meeting. So we go to the next item, which is the Counter Fraud and Enforcement Unit report. The objective of this is to provide the committee with an overview of the work which is being done by the unit on housing and tenancy fraud over the previous year. I would like to invite Emma Cathcart, Assistant Director, Counter Fraud and Enforcement Unit, to present to the committee, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is our annual report to you because you own stock, so we need to do your report in relation to the housing and tenancy fraud activities that my team undertake, so supporting the housing services teams. What I've tried to do is put in the summary of work from last year and this year to give you a comparator so you can see whether anything's changed, whether it hasn't. What we will be working to, so I've outlined at 3.5, for example, the investigation cases. We will continue to do those, but the hope is in the future that the verification activity, so that's 3.7, will go back to the housing team rather than my team. So historically we did it because the team were not directly employed by the council, so it was a check of our systems, but it would seem better use of resources if we can now train them, steer them to do and undertake the checks themselves. So those checks are in there just to give you an idea of how much we support in terms of applications, homeless applications, etc. And ultimately is to verify that those people who are applying for properties, we're giving it to the right people for the right reasons. At 3.3, there's the rough guide that is used nationally in terms of the impact of tenancy fraud and how much it costs. It's an average figure and it's always really, really difficult to judge, but it's a rough guide of what happens. You know, we're much better to prevent giving properties, prevent anything. I'm all up for prevention rather than detection. It's always harder to get your properties back, get money back. In terms of the activity, it also lists if we have recovered properties, so those that we have come back, and I've detailed why. So at 3.14, the properties we recovered, 3 had been abandoned and 1 had been sublet. What I want to focus on this year is us focusing on specific cases where we are looking at fraud, we are getting properties back, we are looking to prosecute in the right circumstances, we're looking at unlawful profit orders where people have sublet, so a little bit more structure around enforcement activities so that it acts as a deterrent. And it may be that we look at communications with our tenants in terms of raising awareness, explaining, so not necessarily a hard line in the first instance, but just a bit more of a focus on the enforcement activities my team undertake. So rather than just verification, are we looking at the right areas? Are we looking at the right cases? And how are we pursuing those? We do look after your National Fraud Initiative matches that relate to housing anomalies. So this is the national exercise that the Cabinet Office undertake. The council send lots of different data sets to central government. They do the matching and then they refer them back to the individual councils to work through the anomalies. And we receive a number of those in terms of your houses. So that could be other people being present, that could be credit checks to show other occupants or people have moved, anything like that. We get those, we review those, and we would open cases in the appropriate way if we needed to. But it's another assurance piece of work that we do in the background. We review your housing waiting list. So at 3.17 onwards, I've talked about the housing waiting list review. We look at your emergency gold and silver band, and that isn't necessarily fraud. That could be error as well, but it's making sure that only the people that are on the waiting list should be. And if people have found homes or the information they provided on their application may not be correct and needs reassessing, we review it and it goes back to the team for adjustments or removals. And again, that's about loss avoidance because we're not putting people in temporary accommodation unnecessarily, which is obviously a cost to the council. What I have to apologise for is at 3.19, the figure for Cheltenham is incorrect. So that 1,811 should actually read 2,914. I apologise, I didn't get that change in time for publication, so better to do it tonight rather than some people having the wrong figure. But yes, it points out the importance of making sure the right people are on the housing list. And we do that review across the county. So again, it gives consistency across everybody and we're all working together. In terms of, as I say, the focus for this year will be fraud awareness, and that's generally, so not just housing fraud, but for the purposes of this committee, that will be how we best raise awareness with staff, management, residents, tenants, and members. So making it more relatable. Fraud's become very, very difficult to explain. It's huge. It's a problem throughout. So making it focused. And that, as I say, I think is probably a bit more of a campaign with tenants to ensure they understand how to refer matters, what types of things should be referred, and yeah, making sure that we're keeping on top of it. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is fascinating, really good to see. I've got a couple of things I'd like to ask about. In the first instance, when we're talking about tenants knowing who to talk to and what to do, I've had this a lot where I live, people coming to me and saying, we think that someone has abandoned a property, or we think that somebody is fraudulently claiming because they're living somewhere else, and they don't know who to talk to. And quite often I don't know who to talk to either. I wondered, because I know we're doing some work on the revised tenant handbook, is it worth putting some kind of contact or some kind of advice on this in there so that people have got, if they're suspecting that there is fraud, they've got something to refer to or somewhere to go that's easy to access. 3.17, this was very interesting. So when you review the housing waiting lists, as you say, you're going to encounter things that are not good, that are fraudulent, but possibly also errors. For example, I was made aware a while ago about wheelchair users being offered properties on the first and second floor because although they're down as wheelchair users, they're not down listed as needing a ground floor property. And I've heard people come to me saying, oh, I'm a single person, but I'm being offered a 2-bedroom property. Am I entitled to one? Well, no, because your benefits won't pay for it. So how does this work then? Do you, if you find things that are errors that are not fraud, do you then take that back to the people running the lettings process and how that works. And could I just finally ask, 3.25, whereabouts within the service are the staff who are going to be doing this that are being trained up, and how is that progressing? Because obviously we've come out of being an ALMO as CBH and have now become an in-house service, and now we're changing the way this is working. So I mean, I just wonder how that's going, because we are having change on change on change. Thank you.
So to start with the first one, yes, it's an excellent idea. I think there should be a section in the tenant handbook about what is housing and tenancy fraud and how anybody can report whatever they need to. Because sometimes I think people don't necessarily understand either what the particular areas are. So yeah, I will sort that and make sure there's a section, and it includes how to refer to us and all the website links, etc. In terms of the housing waiting list and errors, yes, they would go back to the team to verify. So we would recommend that the review is undertaken of that particular application. Our stuff is gratuitous, so it could be I'm overcrowded because I've got several children, and when we look, they've got one. So it's identifying what may be something, and we certainly wouldn't pursue somebody for reasons that they didn't create the problem. It's that they've moved, they've been housed, and they're still on the list. Or they aren't overcrowded anymore, or they've intentionally made themselves homeless. Whatever it is, we would do a report back to the team and work with them to make sure it works its way out. Where there is obvious fraud, we would open an investigation for my team, and it would go to a different investigator to then progress that in the correct manner. And in terms of the how with the team, the partnership also worked with Stroud, and Stroud also own their own housing stock. So in that sense, it's applying the same logic about it doesn't matter that the staff were an ALMO and now they're part of the council. It's all making sure they can verify, and they're excellent at that anyway. They're referring stuff to us to do it. So we've created an enforcement meeting, which meets quarterly, and that's specifically for us to talk to all the different areas of the housing team about how we best mitigate error, fraud in their areas. And that could be even supporting recovery of debt. So if people have left, do they need tracing? The right to buy applications, we want to make sure that we're doing money laundering checks. How do we work with the enforcement team to ensure they get the right statements? What are we doing about unlawful profit orders? So there's a group that meets quarterly, and then we're managing that with the team. But we worked for what was Cheltenham Borough Homes, so we also have the relationship already with the staff. So in lots of ways, the technicalities of the employer are not quite the same for us, because we were already working with them.
Could I ask a question, actually? So it's to do with 3.17. And first of all, check that I'm kind of understanding it properly. So you talk about verification of applications by band. Is that a sample of applications, or is that all applications that happened?
All.
Okay, so my mental arithmetic, and this is very rough, it's in my head, is that it comes to about 730 applications, roughly speaking. Of those, you made 319 recommendations. Could you talk me through what a recommendation is? And you removed 44, because 319 recommendations as a proportion of 730 seems quite a lot. And 44 removals as a proportion of 730 seems quite a lot.
So it will be, as I say, it could be very varied. So it could be as small as this housing application was made by a couple, but actually when we've looked at the data we hold, there's only a single person in that property, for example, that's now applying to move or applying for. So it could be really, really small, and it could be a review of, actually, you might want to keep them on the waiting list, but they're not necessarily in the right band. And again, because temporary accommodation is expensive, we want to make sure everybody's where they should be, so that those in emergency and those in gold are in the right band. So again, it could be somebody has applied and they've listed a disability, but we can't find any disability benefits or in payment. So is the disability, does it need further verification and requests from the applicant to ensure that the information they've supplied is correct? So it can be all manner of things. It could be that they've moved. It could be that they've been on the list for some considerable time and legitimately they've moved themselves, but they've just not removed themselves from the housing waiting list. So it's not necessarily even an error. It's administrative in terms of tidying up the list. So it's lots of different things.
I suppose where I'm trying to get to is, so you're saying that these aren't necessarily people doing bad things as such. They can be honest mistakes, which is reassuring actually in terms of those numbers. But secondly, I suppose I haven't got any context for those numbers. So I don't know how we compare with other local authorities and whether we're relatively high or not.
I can give you that because we do it for everybody. So I could easily supply the details of what we've done across the county and what it looks like. But it's positive as well. So it's not necessarily just a negative recommendation. It could also be a positive one where we say this person's circumstances are actually in need of review because they need to be rebanded higher rather than lower. So it's a whole exercise. It's not about the team finding just bad, just naughty. It's about it being correct.
Yes, I can just add into that. A lot of the time people's circumstances change since they made the original application. Obviously, we're reliant on customers updating their information. Sometimes that's not done, so some of it is prompts to get the right information. You've got a two-stage process of verification because you've got the kind of housing option and the banding side of it. Each housing provider then also, so for example, Cheltenham, our lettings team, there's a whole verification process that we have to do before any offers are made as well. So it is a very stringent process.
Matt, thank you. So just to return to the problem is this can get politicised and can turn quite nasty. So I'm just trying to, the fact that it's not bad much of the time is really good news. And I suppose for future it would be good to have separate figures for the ones which are truly fraudulent and the ones which are just people being moved between bands for good reasons or they made a mistake or whatever. Any other comments or questions? Well, can I say thank you then? Thank you, appreciate it very much. Okay, so the next item is the number 7, which is the Housing Health and Safety Rating System policy. So the objective for this is to provide the committee with the Housing Health and Safety Rating System policy and for sign-off and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. So I would like to invite Joe, am I saying your name correctly? Ray, apologies, many apologies. I would like to invite Joe Ray, Health and Safety Officer, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And good evening, and thank you for including the Housing Health and Safety Rating System on the agenda this evening. The Housing Health and Safety Rating System policy outlines the 29 different types of hazards that are reportable under Awaab's law, including excess cold or heat, fire and electrical hazards, hygiene and food safety issues. The policy also provides details of how the hazards should be reported and dealt with and includes the specified timeframes for acting upon those types of hazards. The policy has now been revised to include the points which were raised at the last Housing Committee meeting on the 21st of January and also in line with the National Institute for Healthcare, the NICE requirements as well. So the updates to the policy are included in section 6, page 6, which is the group's hazards and vulnerabilities section. It's a table. The first hazard been updated is carbon monoxide, and it's been updated in the policy to include the fact that all persons are at risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Also, there's higher risk categories have been included, which are people over age 80 plus, and children and pregnant women. And this is in line with the guidance from the National Institute for Healthcare requirements. The second hazard has been updated in relation to noise, which is number 14, noise. There's two elements of noise. It could be behaviour noise, and then the ASB team and tenancy management team, they would be the responsible teams for this hazard. Or if it's relating to the property condition noise, say for example the windows perhaps need replacing, then it would be the technical investment team who would be the responsible team. Looking at hazard number 17 in relation to personal hygiene, this was discussed at the last housing committee, and Justine Skit explained that if the personal hygiene relates is impacting on the building, then the tenancy management team would be the responsible team for that hazard. And finally, the hazard number 21, falling on stairs. The policy has now been updated to reflect that if the fall relates to cleaning, then it would be our state services team who would be the responsible team. And it would be the repairs team if it's a repairs issue. So thank you for raising these points at the last meeting, and they've now all been included in the updated housing health and safety rating system. Thank you.
Much for updating it and talking us through it. Does anyone have any questions? Ian?
Just very briefly, yes, this is brilliant. Well done. I'm really happy with that, because all the things that we spoke about have all been fixed. Any concerns that I had are resolved. So excellent. Thank you.
I think, any more questions? No? Okay, so next item.
You need to vote.
Of course we do. So apologies. So we need to vote, as I've been reminded correctly. The Cabinet House. So our vote is this: the Cabinet Housing Committee recommends that Cabinet approve 1, the Housing Health and Safety Rating System, otherwise known as HHSRS policy. So show of hands, please. Thank you. Unanimous.
Close your hand up.
Flo.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I didn't want to say this before the vote, so I'm saying it afterwards. And it's to say this: I think it's fantastic that the work done by our tenants and our leaseholders has been listened to, it's been applied, and now we have that as what I hope will be council housing policy. So it's important to us that the tenants know, yes, we have a voice, yes, we can speak, yes, we're listened to, and that's what's happened, and I'm delighted. Thank you, Chair.
Flo, thank you for making that point. It's a very valid point, and you're absolutely right. Ian.
Yeah, I think that they might know that we have a voice that won't shut up.
No, I think we have an engaged committee, and I think that's really good. We also have an engaged Cheltenham Borough Housing Group, so that's brilliant. Okay, next item is damp, mould and condensation policy. So the objective of this is to provide the committee with the damp, mould and condensation policy for sign-off and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. So we will be having a vote at the end. I would like to invite Gemma Rowbury, who's Head of Regulatory Compliance, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to resubmit our damp and mould policy for consideration and approval. The policy aims to outline Cheltenham Borough Council's commitment to keeping our homes dry, warm and safe, and that we will act quickly to fix problems relating to damp and mould when they arise, keeping in line with AWAB's law timeframes. We have taken into consideration all of the comments previously made and have updated section 1.1 to reflect the inclusion of leaseholders. Section 6.6 has also been amended and details that any recharge of works relating to damp and mould will be considered under the terms of the lease. Following the amendments made, we now ask the committee to approve the damp and mould policy and welcome any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, before Flo says it, because what she said last time applies equally this time. Thank you for listening to the committee and updating accordingly. Any questions? Ian?
Yeah, hi. Couple of questions. In the briefing note at the end of the pack, there are some information about the new Decent Home Standard and the changes that are being proposed and the consultation that's happening. Will this policy then need to be amended in line with changes to the Decent Home Standard when this happens, and do we have a time frame for that? And my only concern that you haven't raised from last time was what happens when our team, and I've worked with the damp, mould and condensation team over many years, and they do a fantastic job, and real improvement has been made here. But when they have exhausted everything they can possibly do, and they have advised and advised and advised, and the tenant simply refuses to do that, and they are still complaining, when there is no more that could reasonably be done. I was just concerned that we don't have that defence as we did in the previous policy in this one. And that was my only concern. Whether we are covered by it being in the previous policy, I don't know. But if there's a huge amount in the policy about our obligations to tenants and what we will do and how we will communicate, and that's brilliant. But if we get to the point where somebody is just being a pain in the you-know-where, and we have done everything we reasonably can, there doesn't seem to be anything in here that gives us that defence. And I that was my only concern. I don't know if you want to just let me know what you think.
Gemma?
To comment on the issues, if they keep occurring, unfortunately, there's not really much we can do to, if tenants, if they don't listen, we can communicate with them, we can give them as much information as possible, but we just have to keep trying to rectify the situation. And unfortunately, it can occur, but it's just, we have to start the process again, and we have to keep trying to rectify this.
Yes, of course. And I think Matt wants to.
Matt might say what I was going to say. I think just to add to what Gemma's saying, it is a challenging situation. It's not only DMC that we see these sorts of issues. Ultimately, it comes down to our tenant management team really using their skills, and they are very skilled at doing this kind of work, to really engage with the tenant, because quite often, if we have tenants in these situations, it's because there is an underlying issue that we need to try and uncover what that is, so we can then actively work with them and signpost to all the right agencies and get them the support they need, and then we'll see things start to improve. I mean, ultimately, there is always a tenancy in place, and ultimately we can always look at how we enforce that tenancy, but that would be an absolute last resort. Our aim will always be to work with the tenant. As difficult as that can be, that would be, when we have officers that specialise in sort of intense interventions, and we would look to them to intervene in these kind of situations. But I'm hoping Helen can probably answer the question about decent homes.
So on the decent homes question, the policy will need to be updated. I think these are down for review every 3 years, is it? Anyway, and the new decent homes is due to come in 2035, so it's a long way off at the moment, but yeah. Okay.
So just to add that, I suppose the only thing, so the absolute priority is people's health and well-being, and absolutely what you've said about trying to work with that is massively reassuring. I suppose there is just a question, if people won't be helped, where does the liability end in a legal sense? Do we have any protection on? Though obviously we don't want to go there. We really don't want to go there. But
No. So as with any kind of legal case, you know, you're always looking at things like contributory negligence and that kind of stuff. So if the tenant was being negligent or they weren't engaging, as long as we have properly documented everything we've done and we're able to demonstrate that we have done everything we could possibly do, then we wouldn't be liable in those circumstances.
Just to say that obviously the documentation of what's happening is extremely important, and that is something that our tenancy managers will actually, in the local area, be doing all the time. Because someone who has a problem with damp but doesn't open their windows, for example, because they can't afford to heat the place if they do, that is an issue that has to be tackled, but it will be noted. And therefore, when we do that, we will have the evidence that we may need in the future, should there be an issue.
Claire.
Yes, something that, though not directly related to the policy as it's written down here, I was just wondering, those of us who sit at planning committee have noticed that quite a lot of our properties have been rendered recently. Is there any evidence that that's improved the situation in terms of damp and mould within those properties?
Yeah, so the EWI programme is about improving the thermal comfort of the property. So everything is done to the building as a whole. So, you know, we make sure that we seal any gaps and, you know, if we're replacing windows, that there's no sort of, we're not causing any issues. So yes, it should improve the energy efficiency of the property. The loft insulation is topped up. So we look at it, as I say, as a whole house approach in that way. And then we have also installed some monitoring equipment. So the technology gives us readings to say, you know, what the average temperature in the key rooms, the habitable rooms is at any time. So, you know, it gives us a bit of an alert if somebody's not turning their heating on, for example. But we do need to work with the tenants to make sure that they're not fixing anything to the render to sort of invalidate it. So we leave them with quite detailed instructions around how to live in their property without disturbing the improvements that we've made. So it is a bit of a learning exercise for them, and similar to where we're installing like air source heat pumps. It's a new technology that we're having to explain. But yes, if everything is working as it should, then it should improve the efficiency of the building, and then it's down to the tenant as to how they use the heating and live within it.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah. Just a quickie. I was sent this by somebody that I know the other day, and it says the wall is crumbling and mouldy from a leak upstairs that has ruined my whole hallway. So it's not just where the people live in; it's the people in the flats around them that can cause problems as well. And just sort of saying that it's not her fault, and she's had to have the heating on for 3 days to try and dry it all out. But she's not getting very far with it, and she's not very happy with Cheltenham Borough Council. So I'll pass it on to you afterwards. I'll show you who it is, but I won't say it publicly. Right.
And that sounds like a very specific case that we need to take seriously, but probably best dealt with offline because it's so specific. Thank you.
No.
Absolutely, because when you have flats, bath leak and things like that, we've all been there. Okay, thank you. Okay, so any more questions or comments?
I think it's important to remember the work that we've been doing since 2023 in respect of setting up the DMC team and focusing on not just monitoring, but repairing, but also education. So there's been a lot of work, and it has played dividends for this year because we resource ready for a purge of damp, mould and condensation, but it seems to be coming down a manageable level. So the signs from that coming from 2023, when we designated, it is paying dividends for what we're doing on managing our properties. And what happened in October when Ab's Law came in, I know there was quite a lot of social housings that was looking for people that could deliver a service that we'd already got in 2023. So I think we should recognise the work that we've done to get to where we currently are, and obviously maintain that as well through education and monitoring.
Thank you, John. Ian.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I've worked with that team since it was started, and they have been excellent. And the work that they have done is it's taking us to a much better place than we otherwise would have been. And yes, absolutely, I totally agree that we need to remember that, yeah, it's not perfect, but we have done a huge amount of work on this. I also attended a training session by the former head of the DMC team at the Skills Hub in Hester's Way, who I always like to say they do a wonderful job. And it was fascinating. I learned so much about what is causing the damp and mould and why it's happening and how it can be prevented. And I've tried to share that with tenants when they come to me, but I do recommend, I don't know if that is still happening, but yeah, if you get a chance to go and sit in this session, it is excellent.
Excellent. Any other comments? Okay, so we vote on this. So the Cabinet Housing Committee recommends that Cabinet approve 1, the damp, mould and condensation policy. Can we have a show of hands, please? Brilliant, thank you. Okay, the next thing is item number 9, which is the leasehold ownership policy. So the objective for this is to provide the committee with the leaseholder repairs and charges policy for sign-off and recommendation to Cabinet for approval. I know our leaseholder representative, Lizzie Maudsley, isn't here today, unfortunately, but I know she's seen it, and I know that she's made comments on it in advance of the meeting, and they've been fed into the document, I believe. So that's excellent. I would like to invite Matt Ward, who's Head of Housing Services, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before you have the leasehold ownership policy, which covers all aspects of being a leaseholder. So the policy goes into more detail than just the kind of recharging mechanism for repairs or major works. It covers every single aspect of the lease, essentially. So this document itself derives from the council's lease that it has with leaseholders, because that is the legally binding document. So what we've taken opportunity to produce is not only cover how recharge elements are carried out to leaseholders through annual service charges or Section 20 works. We've covered the whole aspect of being a leaseholder. So we've covered the council's obligations as a landlord, and we've also taken opportunity to cover the leaseholder obligations. So it's primarily based on the lease, but it does take into account various acts of legislation, which we've detailed in the policy itself. So you've got 2 documents. You've got a summary policy document, and then you've got the main document itself. So it's a comprehensive policy which is available to leaseholders and also to colleagues as well in various teams as well to understand the obligations of the council and the leaseholder. So it's been to our leasehold forum. Lizzie has seen it as well. There was very minor changes. A lot of them were grammatical changes that were quite rightly pointed out to us, and a bit of punctuation. So we've taken on board all those comments as well. I'd like to thank leaseholders thought it was a good document. As I said, if you read the lease, it's very hard, very, written in legal terms. So this brings it more to life and makes it easier to understand, hopefully. We also have on top of this, we have a leaseholder handbook as well, which is an even higher level document. So we feel this is a very useful document. As I said, it's based on the lease and legislation. So happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I've just got a couple of general questions. Not being a leaseholder, and I defer obviously to Lizzie and her colleagues on the panel. It was my understanding that the government were proposing reforms to the leasehold system, and that they've identified some quite severe problems with shared ownership as well. Do we have any information about when these reforms are likely to come through and how this may affect this policy? I remember from when your team briefed myself and other members of the old CBH board, one of the things that we talked about was what happens when leaseholders sign a lease and are given effectively bad advice before that they don't understand what they are signing. And I just wondered from a practical point of view, if because we are being bombarded as ever with television adverts and leaflets asking us to claim compensation for mis-selling. If somebody has been given really awful advice and has signed up to a lease without really understanding it, what comeback do they have? And the other thing, which again we spoke about at that time, when we have multi-occupancy dwellings, there is a disparity between the obligations on tenants and the obligations on leaseholders. And probably the one that I keep banging on about is gas safety certificates, that if you are a tenant, you have to have a gas safety certificate every year. It has to be up to date, otherwise we get roasted. Whereas if you're a leaseholder, you don't. And it was always a concern to me, living in a block of flats with, I think, 12 tenants and 2 leaseholders, that all the tenants have got gas safety certificates, but if our leaseholder were to allow their gas to be unsafe, we all go up together. So it has always seemed to me to be a very, very odd discrepancy in the law. And is there any chance when these reforms to the leasehold system come through that this can finally be resolved? I mean, would the changes, do we think, to the leasehold system retrospectively affect people who've already signed leases? So those were my my questions.
Funnily enough, I had a thing about it today. So just good timing that I happened to have that in my inbox today. So the Common Hold and Leasehold Reform Bill is still currently in draft. MHCRG are currently consulting on a whole load of policy things around what that might look like in the future. And one of the things that they are consulting on is moving to banning leaseholds for new flats. So it would only be new ones, it wouldn't be retrospective. I don't know the answer about whether they will apply the gas safety requirements. I haven't read all the detail yet, but if I come across it, I will let you know. But of course, what I would say is let's hope so, because we certainly as an organisation absolutely strongly encourage all of our leaseholders to have an annual safety check, and we also ask them to send us a copy. We can't enforce it, but it is what we actively encourage them to do, because you're right, of course, especially in mixed blocks. It does seem a bizarre loophole, doesn't it? So let's hope it's addressed. But in terms of the moving away to the new common hold process, it looks like at the moment that that's only going to be for new flats, not retrospective. But as soon as more detail comes through, we'll share it with you.
Matt.
Yes, I can just add to that. We are trying to be proactive. We've got 428 leaseholders. I can't remember the exact percentage split, but a lot of them are owned and sublet out. So that there are requirements there to have an up-to-date gas safety certificate. We're shortly doing a kind of mail out as well to all leaseholders to remind them of health and safety. It can affect your insurance if, so we're trying to politely remind about the importance of doing gas checks and electric checks. We also offer a discounted rate through our contractor that's available to leaseholders that we promote as well. So again, typical of the council, we're as proactive as we can be, but we are obviously governed by the lease and current legislation. Going back to one of your earlier points with regards to individuals purchasing a flat, that's definitely a big frustration of ours. We deal with a range of inquiries. So if someone is buying a leasehold flat and they've got a good solicitor, we send out a management information pack that outlines and clarifies previous expenditure on service charges and estimated costs moving forwards. So that's good when that happens. Unfortunately, we do get the first notification we get is when a lease has been assigned, and then we're dealing with someone who hasn't had any notification about. But that's, unfortunately, we don't know about it until after the event, and their recourse would be against their solicitor who gave them that advice, essentially. But yes, it is complicated being a leaseholder. If you exercise the right to buy or right to acquire, we have to follow a legal framework there. So you are given a section, what's called a section 125 notice, which sets out your costs and expenditure and your responsibilities over a 5-year period. So if you're buying direct from us from the first time, you have that legal process that we go through. Where it can be more challenging is if it's a property that's already been through the right to buy and then it's a private sale further on down the line. But we do send out comprehensive amounts of information when we're asked for it. In terms of shared ownership, we have a number of properties that are under shared ownership. We've just sold ourselves another 5 properties at Regency Village on shared ownership. We're responsible for the sales. We do that in-house because we believe it's certainly cheaper than going through an estate agent with commission rates, but also it gives us a good opportunity to vet a potential new shared owner and make sure, again, they're clear from the offset about their responsibilities. In general, the shared ownership schemes that we manage, they seem to work really well. Again, we're accommodating, we provide a lot of information about any costs, etc. As well. So I'd like to say that it works well in Cheltenham.
Could I, for many years, I've been a leaseholder myself, and actually most of the problems that happen with leaseholders and freeholders are to do with ambiguous charges and ambiguous agreements, and quite frankly, sometimes leaseholders are being ripped off in the private sector. So I take a great deal of comfort from the fact that we're avoiding ambiguity. We're doing precisely the opposite of what some freeholders do. We're being very clear about the charges. We're being very clear about our responsibilities and what we do and don't do. So I think this is really good. I wish the whole leasehold industry was like this.
Do you say we want to be an exemplar?
Exactly. Any more comments or questions? Okay, so we have to vote on this one too. So the vote is the Cabinet Housing Committee recommends that Cabinet approves the leaseholder policy. Can we have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Okay, so we are on to item number 10, which is the draft aids and adaptation policy. So the objective here is to review and approve consultation process for the aids and adaptation policy. I would like to invite Helen McGegan, Operations Manager, Technical and Investment, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the aids and adaptations policy is to inform tenants how to request aids and adaptations in council housing and the process that will be followed. There's a flowchart that's on the screen, which is a simplified version of the one that's in the document, which will be shared with tenants. So that's a useful guide summarising the help that's available. So following adoption of the policy, an internal procedure will also be produced for staff to follow so that everybody is clear on their role and their contribution to delivering this policy. The policy will help us to meet the regulator of social housing consumer standards, in particular the safety and quality standard and the transparency and influence standard. Aids and adaptations to housing can help people to live independently at home for longer and reduce demand on more acute services such as hospital admissions. So the report goes into some context on local housing need, and we'll also be updating our stock database with categories of accessibility so that when we can match people to the right properties at the letting stage. Page 11 of the policy sets out the range of support available, which is, as I say, also summarised on the screen. And basically there's the 4 levels of support that tenants can access. If they want to have a very minor adaptation, there is a simplified route that they can go down where they don't need to get a referral from an occupational therapist, and they can just report their request straight in to the repairs team, and that can be booked in with them to put things like grab rails or lever taps into their property. The other 3 routes, they do all require a referral from an occupational therapist. These are adaptations that are over a value of about £2,000, so that's why we've put that into the policy. So anything sort of small, we've said we'll do without the need to go to an occupational therapist. So what we get from the occupational therapist is a full and detailed description of the works that are required and how it's going to help the individual to live independently in their property. So pages 14 and 15 of the policy set out the application process, and this confirms when a financial means test will be carried out as well. Works are either added to a programme, an existing programme of planned improvements such as the kitchen and bathroom programme, or they're given to a surveyor. So these are the more complicated ones where they might need plans and a planning application to be submitted. So for example, an extension to the property to include a ground floor wet room. So the surveyor could either be an in-house one in my team, or it could be someone external. It will depend on the number of cases that we're dealing with at any time. Plans are drawn up and agreed with the tenant and the occupational therapist for these major adaptations, and the tenant is updated with anticipated timescales for completion throughout the process. Page 16 goes into detail on the eligibility criteria and any qualifying conditions that need to be met before the adaptation can go ahead. So the financial means test follows the same principles and procedures as for private households, who access this same support through the Disabled Facilities Grant, which is a government grant. Tenants of council housing are funded through the housing revenue account. So what we've done is we've mirrored the process for the private housing, but the only difference is the funding source comes from a different place. If tenants are in receipt of certain benefits, then they can means the work can be passported straight through without having to go through the full financial assessment. And upon completion of the work, it will be looked after by the contractor for 12 months, so any defects will be picked up by then. After that, we'll take over the repairs responsibility, and the work will be added on to the cyclical programme for inspection and testing if there's any electrical components. So the proposal is to take the draft aids and adaptations policy out for full consultation over the next few weeks. So that will obviously be with tenants. We'll also send it to take it to the accessibility forum, and I'm working with the participation and engagement team to book in various meetings that I can go to talk to the teams about the policy and to get any feedback. And then I'd like to bring it back to this committee for approval with any changes implemented, which I can draw to your attention at in the report.
Very much. I've been straight away. Sorry, would you mind turning your mic off? Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So Claire and I had a number of really useful meetings with, you know where I'm going, don't you, with National Star College.
Did.
In Pittville, probably a year ago now or something like that, where we learned lots We really learnt a lot. And one of the things that came out very strongly was that when the young adults are looking forward, looking to move on from the campus, it's hard for them to find out what accommodation is possibly suitable for them and available. Could you talk through that a little bit? So if I'm a student at National Star College and I want to move in to a home, could you talk through my journey to find out somewhere which would be suitable for my disability and my wheelchair and how that would work? Thank you.
So, as mentioned, we are updating our stock database to categorise the accommodation in line with the Common Housing Allocation Policy, which is the county-wide Home Seekers Plus. You'll be familiar with that, how we allocate our properties. And that has categories A to G in terms of accessibility. So it covers things like whether the property is fully wheelchair accessible, all the way down to a general needs property which doesn't have any accessible features. So once we've been able to put them into the categories in line with that, then anyone that's applying for a Cheltenham Borough Council property on the Home Seekers Plus website will be able to see which category it's been placed into. So if they need that full wheelchair property, then that's what it will be advertised as. And obviously they'll have to demonstrate through the application process that they need that type of property.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. Flo.
Just to ask, excuse me. Just to ask a simple question, really. We're going out to consultation on this. Number one, what's the reading age of the paperwork that's going out going to be?
I'll work with the team to produce an easy-to-read version. I'm still getting familiar with the processes here around policy development, and I'll make sure it's developed in the right way in terms of meeting all of the guidelines that we have to produce about plain English and everything. So, yeah, if there is any feedback on this draft one that it needs to be even more simplified, then I can take that on board and put it into the new version, or we have a separate version, I'm not quite sure. Is it 12, reading age of 12, is it? Yeah. Yeah.
A reading age of 8 to 10. And if you'd like to know what that means, then a newspaper like the, forgive me, Sun will have a reading age of about 7 or 8. A paper like the Mirror, 8, 8.5. Daily Mail, 10. Then you're looking at The Guardian, probably 18. Financial Times, 21. And so you begin to look at how people can access the written language more easily. And I would recommend seriously that you look at no more than the reading age of 10, and that you actually have short paragraphs, no more than 3 sentences, because that way people can pick it up, read it, and they've done what they needed to do. Otherwise it's, oh God, I can't read this, and throw it away. So it's got to be accessible to everybody. Thank you for all the work you've done. I think it's terrific. And I really do aim to hope that you are going to be the leaders nationally in something like this, because I think it's that good. Thank you.
Yeah, so and just going back to your point around the adults with learning disabilities, I think there's nothing stopping us from having, a pictorial policy as well with very easy to follow steps, like you were saying about how they apply for housing. So it's something we can build into the process.
Ian.
Yes, I'd like to echo what Flo said. I learned such a lot reading this. I think it's great. And I look forward to when it comes back, when it's been through the consultation process. Just a few things that occurred to me. I've had to help tenants who live where I live and who come to me. And to be honest, the hardest part of the whole process is getting the OT referral. And actually, where I've seen tenants, all across the service who have gone down this route, the actual doing of the work part of it is actually done really well. And it's the getting from I need an OT referral to getting somebody out to actually do it. And I think that is where tenants really, really struggle. And I think Gloucestershire have put on a couple of additional OTs to try and clear the backlog. But that is very, very intimidating, I think, for tenants. And that's something that I would say, if there's a mountain in this process, that's it. One of the other things that, and the information on here, it would be so useful to tenants going through this process. So thank you for that. Councillor Clucas and I also sit on the Housing Support Forum. And one of the things which came to our last session was the lack of availability of supported housing for people who are not elderly. And this speaks, I think, exactly to the point you were making, Chair, that we have very, very low levels of housing that can support younger adults who need to live in supported housing. And I know tenants who have, and we're working with them now, trying to work through this. And I think that is something that should form part of this process. Final thing, when the service came back in-house, one of the things I was most pleased about was that we started to get a register of what properties we had that were adapted for disabled people. And I'd be interested to know a little bit more, maybe this is something we can look at in the future, Chair, how this, because I know it's relatively new, how this is actually working for us. Because I think it can be a bit of a complex process, and disabilities are not the same. I know, because I have one, and you're not necessarily you can't necessarily see all disabilities. And one of the things that we do, and maybe I mention the Barnwood Trust as well, who we work with, who look at the needs of disabled people, but physically disabled, mentally disabled, neurodivergent, and looking at accessibility, not just in terms of physical accessibility, but in terms of people who have mental health issues and problems. So they may well be a very good person or good group to talk to about this. But again, I think this is excellent. And as we were saying about being an exemplar, this is how we do it.
Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of points following some of Ian's comments there, actually, which were very helpful as always. So just on the OT referral thing, I think everyone acknowledges it's been a challenge. Unfortunately, outside of our control challenge. The County Council are currently bringing that service back in-house because it's been contracted out for a number of years. So I also sit on the Health and Wellbeing Board across Gloucestershire, and we were talking about this at the last meeting. So that's coming back. So hopefully we may see some changes as that comes back in-house over the next few months. I think also, I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. Lost my train of thought, sorry, Chair. It wasn't about the support, it's about the thing about how this is working for us. I remember what it was now. I think when we finished doing the all the categorisation and that kind of that Helen talked about, I think you're right. I think we give it probably a year, to be honest, maybe a bit less, maybe 6 months. We can do some initial analysis, but it'd be really good to see what impact that has had on the lettings process and the matching and how well that's worked with people being able to see instantly, oh yes, this property has got, you know, is within this category. So I think it'd be good to do that piece of analysis and bring that back to you. I think also just to say back to the Health and Wellbeing Board, the other point I was going to make is there is sort of a bit of a housing work stream in that, and aids and adaptations is the topic for the year for the whole of Gloucestershire, actually, for housing from the health and wellbeing perspective. So lots of people are trying to do this categorisation as well. So it won't just be our stock. Hopefully it will be all of the stock that comes through on everybody's waiting list eventually, but obviously long process to get there. But that is an ambition for Gloucestershire.
Claire, thank you. And I suspect the devil's in the details. So,
Yes.
you know, wheelchairs aren't all the same size, for instance. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's mad.
Yeah, I can just add in from a lettings perspective. It's very much on a case-by-case basis. We really have to be agile with the potential applicant and the support agencies, what adaptations are in the property, what aren't. But all our properties, having a level of accessibility graded will be good. We are really good now because every property that we have that's got adaptations in is advertised and would be matched to someone with those needs. But as I said, we're part of the social housing regulator stuff is kind of good for us because this is stuff we've done over the years, day in, day out. But it's, you know, in amongst all the hundreds of lettings that we do. What the social housing regulator says is, well, where's your evidence? So what we're starting building up already is we've let this property, it's got adaptations in, it's gone to this individual, but they're very, very personal lettings, and we really work hard because the last thing we want to do is take any adaptations out. Again, if we do, we always try and make sure they go back to where they're supplied. But we had a case recently, quite a challenging case where the individual was going to unfortunately be in a hoist. So we had a property that had a hoist and, you know, all the, you know, the kind of racking around it. But we tried to be sensitive, so we took the hoist out, kept the racking, you know, because you wouldn't want to see that if you weren't at that stage. So they're very, very sensitive cases. So it's literally each case by case. That's why lettings isn't a straightforward process of taking someone out to see a property. It's the 276 lettings we've done this year, you know, all different cases and circumstances, but we do our absolute best.
Matt, can I just give my thanks? Because I think we do live in an ableist world. I just think we do. We see the world that way, and actually it's really important that we challenge ourselves to help other people and not be ableist. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Okay, so any more comments on it? Okay, so we have a vote on this to approve the aids and adaptations policy as a draft for consultation. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Okay, next item is item number 11, which is the Housing Improvement Programme. The objective here is to provide the committee with a progress update on the improvement programme developed to resolve areas of non-compliance with the regulator of social housing's consumer standards. So I would like to invite Claire Hughes, Director of Governance, Housing and Communities, to present to the committee, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just an update on where we are with our housing improvement programme. So the programme is progressing really strongly. We're now at 72% complete of all of our actions, which is up from 48% in January. So that's really good. The governance arrangements in the programme remain robust, and there's clear oversight and structured delivery. And the programme remains absolutely laser focused on achieving compliance with the consumer standards and being ready for that inspection when the day comes. As some of you know, during February, we commissioned the Housing Quality Network to undertake a mock inspection for us, to put us through the ringer a little bit and give us a bit of a test. We had some really good positive feedback as a result of that mock inspection. So some of the things that they picked up was around the fact that we had a really well-structured improvement programme. We knew where our areas of weakness were and what we needed to do to be completely compliant. They specifically highlighted our strong leadership and governance, which I was particularly pleased about. And they also highlighted the positive engagement from all of the staff that took part in the mock inspection, which I am massively proud of. They said that all of our staff were really, really passionate and really articulate and really able to demonstrate the benefits of what they were doing and why they were doing the roles that they were doing. So that was really positive. They also fed back that the elected members that they spoke to were really engaged and clearly knew what was happening within housing services and what our issues and risks were. And also that the tenants that they spoke to were really engaged and really felt that we were doing a good job. So that was great. They identified a number of improvement actions for us, but pleasingly, all of these were ones that we'd already identified and were already in our improvement plan. So no real additions to those, but just maybe tightening a few of them up. So we continue to progress along the 4 themes, with also in the back of our mind that we've got 2 new standards coming later this year. So that's the competency and conduct standard, comes in October, and that's about making sure all of our relevant staff are trained to the level that they need to be trained to, and also that we have things like our code of conduct in place for staff, so values and behaviours and all those kinds of things, and that we do strong performance management. Thankfully, we've got a lot of that in place already, so hopefully not a huge amount to do. And then the second one is called STAIRS, and can't remember what that acronym stands for, I apologise. But it's akin to what we already know as freedom of information. So it's not actually really that new for us, because we already do it anyway, but it will be new for a number of housing providers. But we're pretty much there with that, because we already do obviously have lots of FOIs and deal with those anyway. We continue to work on things like our stock condition and all of the other things about where we need to just fill those gaps and strengthen our evidence base. But as Matt alluded to earlier, really good work going on. Still need to capture some evidence in some areas and really prepare for that inspection. We as a team, a leadership team in housing, but also the whole of housing services, remain absolutely committed to achieving that C1. We really, really want it. We hope we can get there. And actually not just being C1, but as I said earlier, being better than that. We want to be the best that's out there, and that's our absolute ultimate goal. And that's where we are with our improvement programme. I'm happy to take any questions.
Ian, would you like to go?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is wonderful. Yeah, I just want to jump the gun maybe a little bit, Chair, because I know we're coming on to the forward plan, but would it be an idea where the HQN have identified areas that we really need to work on to put those onto the forward plan, and to actually, because we also, as a committee, are here to support and do what we can to help with this. So, we would like to do our bit, I think, to support and provide whatever help we can. I just wondered if I could actually read the report, because I've finished the housing sector risk profile, so I need some light reading. I just wondered, because again, I'm I think like you, a bit of a detail person. That would be interesting. I'd be interested to read it. If it's 1 million pages long, it might take me a while. But yeah, just well done, and well done to all the staff and all the people that were involved in that, because yes, we too are very engaged, and we too want the C1, and we want to do, I think, whatever we can to help support that.
Thank you, Ian. I think there's I'm not going to say no to putting things on the forward plan, but a lot what they've identified are things that we're kind of already working on through the improvement programme. So you'll get updates on them anyway through this process of us reporting back to you in terms of the improvement programme. The report, there isn't like a written report that's pages and pages. There's a set of, so there's a slide deck that they did because they gave us a presentation with all of their feedback. I am more than happy to share that with you. It's not for wider sharing, but more than happy to, as part of the committee, to share that with, and the whole committee actually, if you'd like to see that. And you know what, if you're really interested, Ian, we meet once a month as an improvement team. You're more than happy to come and sit in on one of those meetings and watch us in action. If you would like to, I'll ask someone to send you the dates and you can pick one and come along.
I'll wait for my invite to be in the post. Thank you.
Are always more than welcome, as is any member of the committee, if you'd like to see what we're up to.
Can I just also add my thanks and congratulations for the improvements we've made? And for me, it's about an attitude as much as it's about skills and work and knowledge and all those things. And what I found really reassuring and really lovely, actually, is the fact that you all give a damn. You really give a damn, and that shows and that matters, and it comes through in the work. So thank you. Really appreciate it. We can never be complacent. There's always work to do. There's still work to do. But thank you very much. There's been massive progress, and I know you're all really bothered. So thank you. Flo.
Well, can I just thank not just the team that's here, but the whole team, because we are together a team, and that was brilliant to have that recognised by HQN. And the fact that we're not just sitting in an office, ticking a box, filling in a form, we are there, and we're there for our tenants and for the people who live in Cheltenham, because that makes a huge difference, so that people know, actually, I can pick up the phone and speak to somebody, rather than pick up the phone and wait and be deflected. And that kind of thing is absolutely vitally important to how our tenants and how our residents feel too. So from that perspective, I found it a really interesting time with HQN, and I learned a lot. And I'm really pleased that they felt that about us, because for me, housing isn't about bricks and mortar. It's not about climbing the steps to your flat. It's about home. It's about where you live, what you have. And to have that recognised by HQN as being part of our own way of doing things, I think is tremendous. So thanks to you, Claire. Thanks to you, Ian, for being the voice of the tenants, because having that voice is so important, certainly to me and to everybody else here. And sometimes we'll agree, sometimes we'll disagree, but that's fine. That's the way it should be. And thank you to the officers for all the work that's been done. And thank you, Chair, for being here, for allowing that to be said, and for knowing and understanding the situation that we are all in. It's been a really interesting thing to go through. And, well, the regulator, come on, bring it on. We can do this. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are we... There's no vote on that one. Okay. So the next item is item number 12, which is the Strategic Housing Risk Register. So the objective here is just to review the strategic risks relating to housing from the register. So I'd like to invite Claire to speak again.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just obviously you've got the risk register and the report in front of you. Just to pull out a couple of changes, we've reduced the risk now on the housing revenue account following the setting of the budget and the forecasts that have been done for the next few years. And the HRA certainly looks to be in a more stable position, so that's positive. We've also reduced the risk on the health and safety, and that reflects all the work that we've been doing, and particularly Joe and Kevin have been doing around the health and safety side of things, particularly the policies, for example, that you've had today, and all the policies that you've approved as a committee over the last few months are really starting to pay dividends, so that's great. We have added one new risk to this report, and this is a risk around access to fuel and increased costs. This is a reflection of the global situation that we're currently in, and we're just keeping one eye on what we need to do if we start to see any sort of limited access to fuel. This may obviously have a significant impact on our repairs service in particular. So we had a meeting earlier in the week, John, well, lots of the people in this room actually, to talk about having a plan for what we would do in the event of a fuel shortage and how we would manage things like our repaired service and having a bit of a phased approach. Always absolutely committed to doing emergency repairs, so we would always do those. But if it was necessary, what we might do about things like routine repairs, hoping it doesn't need to be put into action, but we are thinking about it because it is clearly a risk for us at the moment. That's it really, Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions?
Come on, Ian.
Ian?
Yeah, predictably, yeah. So thank you for this. I've had quite a bit to do with risk management, both with CBH and now here. I just wanted to ask about the effectiveness of mitigations in some of these. So risk ID, HRA, housing revenue account rather. Number 4, ongoing action regarding the turnaround of void properties to maximise the rental income generated. The mitigation effectiveness here is given as low. So I'd quite like to know why. The risk ID 331, housing properties, health and safety. One of these mitigations doesn't appear to be in place, having the independent assurance that health and safety is being managed effectively. That's very concerning, I think, because obviously we've always said that our safety of our people is absolutely top of the list. I mentioned earlier that both Councillor Lucas and I sit on the Housing Support Forum, which is looking at preventing homelessness. So risk ID 356, demand for housing accommodation, strikes quite a chord. I wonder if maybe somebody could, looking at this, maybe advise that meeting about what the plan is to try and improve some of these, because again I notice we've got mitigations that are not in place, and I know because I was homeless that it is the most horrible experience, and for me it was only 4 months. It's one of the reasons that I sit on that forum, because I thought it might be a good idea to have somebody who's actually been through it in the room. But it never ever seems that the resources are there. And I know that the team here in Cheltenham are doing brilliant work to try and prevent homelessness, and they update us every couple of months. And our chair, John Rawson, who I used to be on the old CBH board with. But I think maybe if we could have some idea of the direction of travel here, because that's quite concerning as well. Thank you.
So I'll take them in order. So the first one was on the HRA and the mitigation around voids. The reason that that's still showing as low is because we're still, I think, not in as strong a position as we would like to be with the turnaround of voids. There's a hell of a lot of work going on, and massive thanks to the team to how much effort's going in. But we're in this kind of, we're stuck in a bit of a vicious cycle at the moment, which is kind of a nice cycle because we've got all these lovely new properties coming in from Regent's Village, for example, and we're getting things, but that's just meaning that we just can't get on top of the numbers. Matt and I have met this week and discussed it, and we have agreed a bit of a plan for how we're going to have a approach over the next 3 months, which hopefully will then be able to change that mitigation up to high, hopefully. But we are moving in the right direction. It's not to say we're not moving in the right direction. On the health and safety one, that's an error. That should say yes. Because we have recently had an independent inspection, but we commissioned Ubico to do it because their health and safety culture and the way that they do health and safety is excellent. So we commissioned Ubico to do an independent assurance process for us. So that is in place. That's an error. So I'll make sure that's updated before the next one. On the let me just scroll down to it. Sorry, the demand for housing. Yeah, it's a tough one. We know that housing is a national issue. We know that we, as one provider in Cheltenham, can't solve the whole of Cheltenham's housing issues as much as we might like to. I don't think I can sit here and give you a really good answer to what you're asking, but what I can do is ask Martin to do a bit of an update on where we're going with that and send that round to everyone, if that's all right.
Any other questions or comments? Excellent. So no decision is required on that, but we can take it to Cabinet if we want for scrutiny. But it sounds like not. Item number 13, updates from the tenant and leaseholder panels. So the representatives of the tenant and leaseholder panels sent their apologies, so that will be taken as read. Ian, I can see you.
Yeah, just given that there's nobody else here, I did want to ask if you could update us. We spoke before about tenants being put into a month's worth of arrears by merely by going onto universal credit, and because the terms of the tenancy agreement are that it's paid on such and such a day, and the universal credit gets paid a month in arrears, and so every single person on universal credit is now a month in arrears and is having to pay this back, which just seems a rather ludicrous situation. So we did talk about speaking to the MPs for Cheltenham and Tewkesbury and seeing if they can achieve some sort of remediation of this through the Department for Work and Pensions. The other thing I just wanted to say, I don't know if you have seen these, which are in circulation again. Tenants' advice. This is not a tenant advice service. These are lawyers trying to get people to make disrepair claims. And just to make the point, which I think probably Caroline would make if she was here, that one of the things we do rather well is handle the complaints that we do have and resolve them quickly. And no tenant is going to get any more out of these people than they are by going through the complaints procedure that is already in place. These people are just trying to make money, money which should be going into housing, not being given to lawyers to try and get people to raise disrepair claims. Thank you.
So on the first point, mea culpa, it's my fault. So Max did contact the minister, and the minister did send a letter in reply. What I meant to do before this meeting, and I haven't done, so I do apologise, is to check whether I can share that letter from the minister to Max Wilkinson publicly. Let me double check that, and assuming I can share it publicly, then you can be the judge of the response, if you like. But let me just double check that first of all. But so Max Wilkinson did write to the relevant minister, and the relevant minister did reply, and I'll just check whether I can share it.
We can't comment on the lawyer thing. But no.
Yeah, but your point about is noted. Good. Okay, so the next item is the review of the Housing Committee forward plan. The forward plan was circulated with the agenda and is taken as read. No decision is required, but you may comment on it or suggest further items the committee could consider. Any comments on? No? Okay, so that takes us to item 15, which is the items to be referred to Cabinet. So the committee has recommended the following to Cabinet. Number one, the Housing Health and Safety Rating System Policy. Number 2, they all have such snappy names, don't they? Number 2 is the damp, mould and condensation policy. And number 3 is the leasehold ownership policy. Okay, so they will be referred to Cabinet. The final point is item 16, the briefing note on the housing sector insight. The briefing note was circulated with the agenda, is taken as read, no decision required, but you may comment on the briefing note if you would like. No comments. Okay, so the date of our next meeting is Monday, the 1st of June at 6 o'clock.
Lucas has got a hand up, sorry, Chair.
Flo.
Before we finish, Chair, there are 2 things I'd like to say. The first is thank you to everybody who has been part of this committee, has given their time, their knowledge, their expertise to creating something which I think is going to be a big surprise to everybody when the regulator's been, because I have every confidence we will do well. The second issue I want to raise is to thank our housing officers and actually businesses, organisations around Cheltenham. Because what Dave Bath, our Citizen of Honour, has been able to do is to have donated to us as a town, to our children in our town, some 1,600 Easter eggs, so that children who are vulnerable, who don't have the opportunity to go and spend £2 on an Easter egg, will actually have one. And I just want to say thank you to him. Thank you to the housing officers who did such a lot to bring those Easter eggs in to people, and also to all the organisations and people who donated. And Chair, I hope you don't mind me doing that, but to me, just seeing the children receive an Easter egg is tremendous. Okay, so thank you all for what you did, and thanks, Dave, if you're watching.
No, thank you for that. I actually represent Dave Bath as part of my county council division for Pittville and St Paul's, and it's brilliant what he does, and I rate him very much. So thank you for mentioning him. I confirm that the meeting is now closed and that streaming has ended. Thank you for attending.